This is a very important story. The important story. In the midst of COVID-19, it's an historic opportunity to look at the facts of the world as it is, and then to focus on the solutions to some of our greatest problems. In the 75 years since the United Nations was founded, the human race has never had to face a set of challenges like we do right now. But together, we can overcome them.
It is so decided.
On the 25th of September 2015, all United Nations member states signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, a set of solutions for the biggest problems the world faces.
Next door's on fire. Oh my god. Okay. I'm scared.
You're at risk. Leaving now is the safest option, so leave now towards the beach and shelter in place.
We're going. I'm just getting in his car. We're out of here, guys, because the whole place is on fire. Oh my god, my neighbor's house. Okay. Come on, Clay, we need to go. Oh my god. This is a real nightmare. I can't believe this is real. I can't see anything. This is literally not real. This is not real. Oh my freaking god. All I want is my family.
Pictures and stories continue to file out from Australia about the devastating fires. This one, a satellite image from NASA, and as you can see,
que alcanzaron hasta 2,5 metros en la capital. Rising death toll and massive evacuation in Indonesia and water swarm Greater Jakarta following the heaviest downpour in more than 2 decades.
Worst plague of locusts to affect the region.
the damage to pastures and crops could create, quote, severe consequences for the region where nearly 12 million people are coping. It could be the worst the area has seen in 20 years.
This is a double whammy. You know, we're dealing with the cyclone and with exposure to COVID.
Well, the fires raging in Northern California have now become some of the largest in state history. More than 12,000 firefighters are currently battling the blazes that have...
San Francisco Bay Area smothered by some of the worst air quality on the planet.
Valley reaches an all-time high of 100.
Delhi on Tuesday recorded the hottest day
Spiking above 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Climate change is only part of this story. Our rainforests are disappearing at an extraordinary rate. 1 football field of rainforest is destroyed every 6 seconds. 1 million plant and animal species are on the brink of extinction. By 2050, there will be more plastic in the oceans than fish. And so climate change and our treatment of the natural world are colliding and exacerbating each other to create a perfect storm. This cannot go on. You know it, I know it, and we know what we need to do. We need to reduce global emissions by 50% by 2030. To do this, we need a rapid but just transition to renewable energy. That means an end to the building of new coal power stations and an end to subsidizing of fossil fuels. Government should also shift the tax burden from payrolls to carbon. Taxing carbon rather than people will increase output and employment while reducing emissions. And we need to stop deforestation in its tracks, planting trees instead of chopping them down. We need to think about what we eat and how we produce food, embracing healthy, nutritious diets, sustainable farming methods, and reducing food waste. The climate crisis is an opportunity. Renewable energy is cheaper than fossil fuels. Thousands of businesses are working to go carbon neutral, and the opportunity to generate clean, safe, and decent jobs is enormous. The passion for protest can turn into a passion for changing all of our behavior to create a better, safer, just, sustainable world. The big question we have to ask ourselves now is this: as a species, are we going to be able to work together urgently to solve this? The clock is ticking.
Dear friends, I'm delighted to join you, not just at the end of the 2-week youth-led Solutions Summit on Climate Action, but at the start of something which is truly going to be transformative. That is, young people leading the way in combating the single biggest, the most existential issue of our times. We're at the start in a number of ways. First, because over 600 young people have just spent a fortnight road testing their initial ideas for climate action, whose aim is to make those projects practical and ready for launch. They are almost ready to start, and you will spend the next 3 to 6 months and beyond working on putting them into action and making them sustainable. We'll take them to the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland next year, and we'll take them to our World Council, our highest decision-making body, that will set the course for our future in Denmark in 2022. What's more, there is seed money to fund them. Our money, as they say, is where our mouth is. This project is about multiplication and bringing things to scale, making small ideas go far and sharing them worldwide. Even more, it's about galvanizing global action from young people. The World YMCA is a movement, and this youth-led Solutions Climate Action Summit is also a movement for real change from people who really care. So I just want to say thank you to all you incredible young people who have made this happen and who will make it happen. And thank you to all those who have helped us in the World YMCA, for our fantastic friends at YMCA USA, and especially the YMCA of San Francisco. If it weren't for COVID, we'd all be in that great city now. But we are all here now, online, because we collectively believe in it. And thank you too to the sponsors who have supported us. You are companies and people who know that there are 3 bottom lines by which we were all measured. An economic one for sure, but also a social and environmental one. And dear friends, there's a second way in which we are only just starting. This summit really does mark a shift in how the YMCA is doing business. Youth empowerment and youth solutions are things we and others have been doing for some time, and we are deadly serious about doing them now. And this is just the beginning. Next year, we plan to hold similar summits on 2 other huge issues for young people, jobs and mental health. Again, young people will come to us with their ideas, experts will evaluate them, and give them seed funding to make them fly. So we will be recruiting more young leaders, providing more resources, and driving more change. It's really very exciting. I'm proud to be president of World YMCA, the first female president in the history of World YMCA, and I'm proud that we are making this happen. Or, more accurately, young leaders are going to make this happen. This YMCA is for young men and young women and all gender identities. It is my hope that we will see many great projects coming forth from all. YLS, Youth-Led Solutions, makes me say YES. Yes, it's happening. We are indeed at the start of something that truly will be transformative. Thank you.
I thank Patricia Pelton, the president of the World YMCA, for helping us envision a new future and a world filled with youth-driven ideas and solutions. Welcome back to YMCA's inaugural Youth-Led Solution Summit. Before we proceed with our program today, I would like to remind you that if you prefer to listen to the summit in French or Spanish, please go to app.interactio.io or download the Interactio app from your smartphone store, type in the code YMCA, choose your language, and press play. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Kehkasha Basu, your host, presenter, and MC, and I am so excited for the rest of the summit. In our program today, we will take a look into the future and equip young leaders to be multipliers of change who can empower others. Before we get started, throughout the broadcast, for those on Hopin, we're going to be using the polls feature during the summit today. We're going to put a quick one now to get us started so that you're familiar with the feature. So take a look at the polls tab. Today, we are going to hear from some amazing speakers, beginning with someone who is a huge champion of young people and YMCA. We are extremely delighted to welcome the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, Jayatma Wickramanayake, who has been with YMCA on this journey from the beginning. She was appointed to her position in June 2017 at the age of 26. In her role, Jayatma works to expand the UN's youth engagement and advocacy efforts across all 4 pillars of its work: sustainable development, human rights, peace and security, and humanitarian action, and serves as a representative of and advisor to the Secretary General. Originally from Sri Lanka, Jayatma has worked extensively on youth development and participation and has played a key role in transforming the youth development sector in her home country. After her inaugural YMCA keynote at YMCA 175 in London last year, she has gone on to visit and highlight a number of YMCA initiatives around the world and remains a strong partner in empowering young people. After her keynote today, there will be an opportunity for Q&A, so please take note of any questions you have and put them in the chat box. Without any further ado, please welcome Jayatma Wickramanayake.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I hope wherever you are in the world right now, that you are well and you're safe and you're taking care of your mental and physical health. First of all, let me thank YMCA for inviting me to participate in the Youth-Led Solutions initiative. YMCA is a close and instrumental partner in the work of my office. So I look forward to hearing your takeaways from this fruitful week, learning about the innovative solutions of the 80 participating solution teams have come up with to address the climate crisis, and engaging with you all during this Q&A session. As the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, my role is to support the commitment of the UN system to work with and for young people who are 1.8 billion strong, the largest generation of young people in history. In my work, I had the opportunity to visit countries and different places and meet many young people like you, and I continue to do so right now virtually, of course. I'm inspired by the young people worldwide who make a difference by tackling the issues that matter most to them. Young leaders who are using their voice, their energy, and disruptive thinking to push for transformational change. A remarkable resilience to continue the important work and commitment despite all odds and the uncertainty caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. It feels like it was yesterday when I joined the YMCA in London for the organization's 175th anniversary. In a room filled with the brim of young leaders from all over the world and thousands more turning in virtually, we celebrated your positive impact as key change makers in your communities, designing bold and creative solutions to address social challenges. And although much has changed since we last met, and the world now facing a crisis we had not foreseen, our reasons for being here today are still the same and more important than ever. Beyond the global health challenges caused by COVID-19, the pandemic has also exposed and exacerbated pre-existing and challenging inequalities and exclusion patterns, with young people being disproportionately affected. For instance, young people have lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic. 1.6 billion learners were impacted by the school and university closures worldwide, with only 18% of students in low-income countries continuing their education as opposed to 65% in high-income countries. COVID-19 has also been invoked to unwarrantedly and illegitimately restrict fundamental human rights. The ones most often left behind are the most negatively impacted by it, including young women and girls, young persons living with disabilities, LGBTIQ young people, young refugees, young migrants, indigenous youth, to name a few. However, as they demonstrate time and time again, young people show tremendous resilience, resourcefulness, and leadership while adapting their activism to respond to the emerging challenges of the pandemic. They show unwavering passion and fearless optimism that a better world is possible. And I'm sure many of you associate yourself with this hope. And as all of you know, the clock is ticking and the countdown to 2030 is not stopping because of the pandemic. We have less than 10 years left to deliver on the 2030 agenda of sustainable development. And in this decade of action, young people's role in holding the world accountable and leading at the global and local levels are more important and more relevant than ever. To achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, we must have young people co-lead the way in 10 years that we have left by boosting youth creativity, supporting youth-led activism, financing youth innovations, and making space for young people in all their diversity at decision-making tables. The climate crisis is one of our time's defining issues, and we are running against the clock to fight it before its irreversible changes are made to our planet and to our people. And young people are at the front and center of leading these efforts. Sea level rise is accelerating, increasingly frequent and severe natural disasters are threatening human livelihoods. And the period from 2016 to 2020 is set to be the warmest 5-year period in record. The latest scientific reports that we have seen show us that nature is deteriorating rapidly worldwide. The only way to move forward is to build forward better, and that will require a resilient social and economic intervention at a global, regional, and local level. Both the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement for Climate Action are not merely some aspirational global ambitions. They serve as frameworks for a fair and sustainable transition addressing the COVID-19 pandemic and the climate crisis both. With these, we need to ensure that our recovery efforts support the realization of human rights for everyone, accelerate our decarbonization efforts, and are designed for people and the planet instead of profit. Young people understand these problems, have found solutions. For this reason, it's so important to elevate the voices and stories and initiatives of young people and their leadership. So in this spirit, the Reach Not Preach platform that we have launched and the Youth for Climate Live series we are hosting with the Italian Ministry for Environment in collaboration with the World Bank, bringing together climate activists and policymakers from across generation and across the world, across sectors, to build momentum ahead of the 2021 Conference of Parties and the pre-conference of parties, which will be negotiating the climate agreement next year. So I really count on your voices and your support to make sure in these negotiations, your governments, your representatives represent the best interests of young people and future generations when it comes to climate debates. At the United Nations, we are building on the Youth Climate Summit we hosted last year in September, and are working hard to elevate the priorities of young people, especially on climate action. As you may have heard earlier this year, the UN Secretary General announced the formation of the first ever Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, which convened under the auspices of the UN's first youth strategy, Youth 2030. With the establishment of this group, the Secretary General will benefit from young people's perspectives and honest to mobilize countries to accelerate action on climate change and adapt to its effects. The Youth Advisory Group is just one of the many ways young people are driving the climate agenda forward. We need innovation and collaboration to create a sustainable world that realizes truly just and equitable communities, puts the well-being of people and the planet first and foremost. I'm pleased that the first edition of the YMCA's Youth-Led Solutions Summit is dedicated to SDG 13 on climate action and its cross-cutting nature across the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Young people seldom lack innovative solutions, but more often than not, lack appropriate financing to implement and scale up their ideas. I recommend the YMCA's commitment to supporting young people with resources to other organizations as well. And these resources and seed funding you are providing to these young innovators to address global issues and showcase much needed intergenerational partnership. Young leaders need to continue being empowered and enabled to create change in their community, because not only by having a strong foundation at the community level can we see the changes that are long lasting and sustainable at all levels. Additionally, as we are all fortunate enough to connect and join this summit, I'm also counting on you, the young leaders here today, to extend the privilege that we enjoy through technology, through these networks, through these connections, to other young people in your communities, to other young leaders who are often marginalized and do not have the privilege of being on these platforms. Your ability to convene, strengthen your skills, and build networks together through this platform should not be taken for granted. So I hope that we can make it our duty to open up more spaces for other young people so that their voices can be heard too. So we need to show the generations before us that millennials, Gen Zers are walking the talk when it comes to inclusivity and equality. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much, Jatma, for those inspiring words. We definitely need innovation and collaboration, and it has never been more important for us to rebuild better and walk the talk. Now is your chance to put forward your questions directly, so feel free to post them in the chat box in English, Spanish, or French as we begin our question and answer session with the UN Youth Envoy. To moderate the Q&A, please welcome Stephanie Torndorf from Germany, who is currently doing her master's in political science. She has been an integral part of YMCA's resource group on environment since 2015, as well as YMCA's UN advocacy group. She has attended the United Nations ECOSOC Youth Forum and COP events as part of YMCA's delegation. Stephanie, over to you.
Thank you, Kikashan. Welcome to our Q&A session with UN Youth Envoy, Ms. Yatma Wickramanayake. As Yatma has said in her keynote speech, young leaders need to be empowered and enabled to create change. And that's why right now, you have the chance to ask all the questions you always wanted to ask the UN Youth Envoy. I'm very delighted to have you, Yayatma. And while we are waiting for the first questions to come in, allow me to ask you one of my own. You're from Sri Lanka, which is a country that suffers a lot from extreme weather events, heat, lack of water. And I asked myself, how would you describe your own climate action journey with regards to your home country situation, your home country?
Thank you, Stephanie. That's an interesting question. I wouldn't really recognize myself as a climate activist. My work back home was mostly around youth participation in politics, electoral processes and civic spaces. But your question is very valid because many times island nations like the one that I come from, Sri Lanka, the Pacific Island, small island states, the Pacific Islands, young people living in Africa, particularly the Sahel region, are the direct victims of climate change and the impacts of climate change. And while sometimes our leaders tend to talk about the impacts of climate change as if it's something that is happening in the future, these young people and these communities are experiencing that every day, from droughts to floods to sea level rise to ocean acidification to losing their livelihoods. But the problem is that it's not these young people or these communities who created climate change. They have done very little to contribute to global carbon emissions. They have done very little to contribute to the pollution that we are experiencing, whereas the more developed countries are the ones responsible creating those issues. So I think we need to really move away from climate action into climate justice, because I believe those young people who are experiencing the impacts of climate change needs to be heard first and foremost above all voices, and they need to we need to make sure they receive the reparations for the injustices and the damages that they have experienced because of things that they did not themselves commit.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. You already mentioned that you don't see yourself as a climate activist. As I read your biography, you have been very well active in youth development sector, nationally as well as internationally. When you're looking at the climate action movement right now, or any other youth-led movement, do you have any tips for them on how to move forward, for example, how to get contacts with politicians on a national or even an international level?
Thank you. I usually learn a lot from the climate movement. So I'm not sure if I have many advice to give. I rather take advice from them. But I want to really highlight the solidarity that I have seen in the youth climate movement and the dedication of the youth climate activists. The fact that millions of young people before the pandemic offline and now during the pandemic online are protesting every Friday, pleading their governments to take action on climate change through full strike for climate and Fridays for Future movement. These young people are literally sacrificing their education and their futures, whereas as children they should be allowed to enjoy their freedoms as children. However, they're out there on the streets protesting and doing the job that our elected leaders or politicians must be doing. So I have huge respect for the youth climate movement, including Fridays for Future, Re-Earth, and many other youth organizations that we have seen. And the most important part of that has been the solidarity that I have seen across different countries. So, for an example, it's not possible in every country for people to protest. In certain countries, protesting is illegal. You can go to jail, be imprisoned if you protest against your government. But the youth climate movement has really made sure that voices of the young people in those countries are included in their conversations. I've seen how youth activists in the United States lend their social media platforms to youth leaders in other countries who cannot protest, to use those platforms to make their voices heard. I've seen how sometimes when people like Greta Thunberg get an opportunity to speak, she brings with her young indigenous leaders, young leaders from the global south, and steps back and gives the voice and the platform and the opportunity to the other young leaders. And this is exactly, I think, the type of solidarity that we see in the movement, that we need to also promote among ourselves, to make sure, as I said at the end of my keynote, that our youth organizations and movements are as inclusive as possible.
Thank you. We have the first question, and it's from Daniel from Mexico City. Hello, Daniel. And he asks, do you think the 2030 agenda and the SDGs will remain in force in the post-pandemic time?
I would ask, do we have another choice? Because we, one is that we have agreed to these goals and targets back in 2015. 193 member states of the UN have signed on to this declaration. So they are responsible for implementing their promise and their commitment to their people, but also to the international community. So I think in these 10 years, that accountability is important, that we make sure that we hold the governments accountable for those commitments they made 5 years ago. Secondly, if we don't follow the sustainable development goals, then by 2030, our world will be in a much worse state than we started in 2015. If we are to make our world more sustainable, more peaceful, more just, more fair, that is our roadmap to get there. So I really think that we don't have an option apart from sticking to the sustainable development goals, its roadmap and its targets and indicators. So we need to make it an everyday part of our life. As individuals, what can we do to create more awareness of the goals, implement the goals in our individual capacity? But also, when you go to the polling station and vote, when you select your political leaders, you really have to compare their manifestos, their priorities, their values against these goals and see if we elect these politicians, if we elect these political parties, are they going to go in the direction of the sustainable development, or are they going to go in the opposite direction of sustainable development? And I think making the SDGs part of our day-to-day life, our education curriculums, our political manifestations, political parties, governance systems, is the only way that we will get that. But that needs a lot of commitment and also a lot of financial and political commitment, I would say, if we are to get into that place.
Our next question is from Emmanuelle from France, and she asks, what are, for you, the climate change issues underestimated right now?
I would say climate change, the impacts of climate change as a whole is still underestimated. Even if science says that it is a fact, and that if we go at this phase, global warming is going to increase, and it will increase definitely if we go at this phase beyond 1.5 degrees at the end of the century, and definitely more than 1.5 degrees if we continue at this pace. But still we have politicians, governments who are saying that it's an opinion, that it's not science, that it's not a fact. So I think at some point in time, the sort of fossil fuel industry, oil companies have created this almost a myth that climate change is a concept and not a fact. And I think it is still very strong in some countries, in some communities, and we need to do a lot to change those stereotypes and misconceptions about climate action. And the second part is we see a lot of responsibility being attached to people. So don't use plastic straws, switch off the light when you exit the room, use recycling, and kind of putting this responsibility on people. don't get me wrong, that's important. 7 billion of us doing these things can make a big impact. But still, 80% of the global carbon emissions come from G20 countries, not by a young person in Fiji who uses a plastic straw. 70% of global carbon emissions come from 100 corporate companies, not by a young person in Sri Lanka who doesn't recycle. So I think the tables have to turn, and the questions that needs to be asked as to who is most responsible for global carbon emissions and the climate change impacts we are seeing, and hold those who are most responsible to account without putting the responsibility on young people or communities or individuals who are already, of course, trying their best to make that individual contribution.
Perhaps we can kind of cut it short. There's one question. Okay, so apparently we are out of time. So sorry for you, Tuila. But I can assure you, Yayatma has seen your question, and perhaps
if I can have 1 second, Stephanie. Tuila,
yeah, go ahead.
please search for Believe Better. So on my website, you will find a policy paper named Believe Better, and that documents all the good practices of young people being part of monitoring and evaluation of the SDGs, which is your question.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yayatma, for taking your time and joining us for our session. And thank you to all of you who have sent in questions. They were very, very good. And I really learned a lot from you all today. And yeah, for the rest of you, I can only say stay tuned. There's much more coming up. And yeah, thank you again. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that engaging discussion. Don't forget to let us know where in the world you're tuning in from in the comments section on YouTube, or hop in or tweet using the hashtag YMCA Youth Solutions. And remember to keep checking the polls on Hopin and selecting your answer. Up next, we will hear it directly from a panel of amazing young leaders who are on a journey to address the climate crisis. Our flagship summit panel brings together bright young minds from Norway, the Marshall Islands, South Africa, Chiang Mai, and Brazil, two of whom spoke earlier on Monday. All our speakers are at different stages of their leadership journey, but have taken the first steps towards creating a more just and equitable world for all. Following the panel discussion, questions are invited from the audience, so take notes, keep track of any questions, and post your favorite quotes and moments on social media using the hashtag YMCA Youth Solutions. To moderate our panel, please welcome someone who joined us on the environment panel at YMCA 175 in London last year, Joe Herbert James from Tirfan, UK.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. My name is Joe Herbert James. I work in the UK. I'm based in Wales. I work for Tirfan, a Christian charity working around the world, leading their theological work on the environment and economic sustainability. I'm also pursuing a PhD looking at the same topic. It is my pleasure to be hosting this flagship panel at the inaugural Youth-Led Solutions Summit and highlight the work of an amazing group of young leaders we have for you today who are taking climate action in their communities. Everyone in different parts of the world and whose leadership, whose action-orientated approach looks different in their context. And we'll get to explore some of that. So let's get straight in. I'm going to introduce our panel before you get to hear from them. We have Simageli, and she is the co-founder of South African Youth Biodiversity Network and serves on the steering committee for a youth constituency in the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. We have Bettine, and she is an environmental studies student from the Marshall Islands and is currently taking environmental studies at the University in Washington State. We have Matilda from Norway. She sits on the World YMCA Executive Committee, and she co-leads the creation of one of the first World YMCA environment initiatives aiming to advance the climate change agenda. We have Herman, and he's an English teacher as well as a volunteer with Chiang Mai YMCA in Thailand, who has been taking action on climate through YMCA Asia Pacific Alliance Green Ambassadors Programme. And finally, we have Anna Luisa, and she is a young scientist, social entrepreneur, and founder and CEO of Safe Drinking Water for All, and based in Brazil. So I'm really excited about this panel. We have people from all over, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of what they've been up to and what they're doing in their own lives. So I'm going to ask them all a question, and I've asked them, you're not going to get the full story because we haven't got enough time, but my first question to all of you is, how did you first become passionate about the climate? And what were some of the first things you did to take action? And so first of all, I want to take that question to Simageli, if she would answer that one first.
Thank you so much for hosting me. I pointed this back when I was 14 years old in high school doing grade 7. I grew up in a rural town, always loved nature, but it was in the environmental club where a link was made between what I experienced and the changes in general and broader. And I started being active there by doing environmental awareness activities, picking up litter, and many other activities from the school environmental club. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Kelly. Bettine, I'm going to you next.
Thank you, Joe. How I got interested, it was like very recently in high school. I was also not invited, but I took part in a camp that was dedicated to teaching Marshallese students about the sort of impacts of climate change, of where we're from. And I was genuinely I was like, I've never even thought of this because, in our schools, we never really talk about it, despite the fact that we actually use all the resources of where we live. And so I wanted to learn more, and thus I got more interested in climate education and put myself in more initiatives surrounded around that.
Amazing, thank you. Matilda.
Yeah, good question, Joe. Back, I remember I always like the other friends here. I always liked nature and being outside and everything, but just the interest for environment to me, it was I thought that you wanted to hug trees to care about environmental protection and everything. But then I learned about sustainable development, and this was before the Sustainable Development Goals and the whole agenda. And I was so eager to learn more, and then I really saw the light. And Googled and figured out that the YMCA here in Norway had an advocacy group on working on environment and sustainable development. So that was my first experience.
Thank you. Herman, can you tell us next?
Okay, thank you very much. As I am a volunteer teacher, my first school was on the mountain, and I saw when I saw many people throw away the garbage and throw away the waste and burn the forest. I feel a little bit I get mad. I get mad, and so I try to find a way to help the green because I'm very into uh, green color of the forest so much. That's why I want to save that green. So I try to find the information by myself, like from the Google, from the new knowledge from the blog, to teach my student as much as I can. That's why I started from there.
Brilliant, thank you. And Anna Luisa, what about yourself?
Well, for me, it was my experience that I cannot tell when I began, but since I was a kid, I like to play watching insects and trying to figure out how nature works. So it was pretty clear that I wanted to become a scientist. And when I was 15 at high school, I finally had my opportunity to work with water to try to solve a big issue in our world, and I just got so passionate about finally having this opportunity to become a scientist that since that age I never stopped to work with my product, and then the startup came up, and yeah, that's the reason of the story.
Amazing. I mean, I feel like I could ask you all so much more about what happened. So we've heard a little bit of where it started, and for some of these, I'm going to ask what things look like today, what they're involved with today. So again, I'm going to start with Simageli.
Yeah, so I'm based in South Africa in a very beautiful part that is called Duba. I work for an NGO called Wild Oceans, and the Oceans Alive project. So I work with the communities around Ismangaliso Wetland Park, doing environmental education, overseeing community engagement activities. So that includes engaging with the local leadership, politically, the traditional structures, and ensuring, the great success of the Oceans Alive project. It also includes running community beneficiation projects as we are looking to establish community hubs that are going to be resource centers, for example. So it's at a more local action level. That's what I'm currently doing. But at a more regional and international level, I'm currently chairing the Communications Task Force of the African CSOs Biodiversity Alliance. It's an alliance of African civil society organizations that have come together to influence the post-2020 global biodiversity framework and other policies in the CBD. But what is great is that because of the wealth of organizations, we're running campaigns on great ape tourism, on zoonosis, on all those other things. And then finally, what I'm going to mention is that I'm involved with the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, which is also the youth constituency to the CBD. So this involves arranging a lot of youth capacity building initiatives so that they understand the policy space, and then running consultation meetings where we say, these are discussions at a global level. This is where it comes from. This is the science behind it. What are your thoughts? And we combine that into reports and policy positions and submit it to the CBD itself and different governments. And basically, the South African Youth Biodiversity Network that you mentioned, that I co-founded, does the same, but at a national level. So yeah, this is what I'm up to currently. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. And I want to ask you, Samangeli, it sounds like you work with a huge amount of people, and there's lots of different people involved, lots of organizations and groups. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role that networking has played for you to get you to this point, and the different people you're working with, specifically on climate solutions? So it's not just you that gets yourself there, but what role does networking play?
Yeah, It plays a very big role, especially because, environmental problems are not a one sector problem, right? It's not an issue of environmentalists. And also, in order to address it, you need to network with people in business. You need to, interact with people in agriculture, with people in mining. So it does play a very big role because you get to understand other people's perspectives and what is driving the activities that they are doing. And the more informed you are about other sectors and beyond those sectors about other societal issues, then the most likely you'll be able to come with a solution that would be accepted to be implemented by different parties. So networking is playing a bigger role because this issue is not just a conservationist environmental issue, but everyone's issue, and you need them at the table.
Right, thank you. That's so helpful. Anna Louisa, I'm going to go to you next and just ask again a little snapshot of what it is you're working on today for most of the time.
Yeah, so I'm in Brazil. I'm a biotechnologist. And when I was 15, I started develop of a technology that's called Aqualuz. And it cleaned the water using just the sun energy. And at the age of 17, I founded the startup Safe Drinking Water for All to not only improvement of Aqualuz, but to create other technology directly for water and sanitation problems. And so we have impacted more than 2,000 people since the last year, when we finally started to implement the technology after several of technical improvements. And so we are also launching another technology for sanitations and water issues.
Thank you, Anna. And gosh, that sounds amazing. And you're involved with so much. Okay, Herman, I'm going to come to you next. If you could give us a little snapshot of what you are involved with today.
Yes, right now, on the climate change, uh, now my school put the policies in my school to not only the student not only knows how to separate the waste only, but they know now we put the environment issues to every subject. For example, like a science and math subject, uh, we try to teach the student to know how to calculate, how to know the footprint like that. And we invite all the teachers to join these activities also. And we show how important of the climate change activity to our boss. And now uh, our students, they understand and they know more about how important of the climate change. And we have taken the students to join many activities about the climate change with the local community also.
That's such a great approach, and to see that getting lots of other people on board, because surely the other educators need to be on board with that. Can you tell us a little bit, how do you bring others to the table? How do you get them involved if it's not their primary subject or primary interest? How do you share your vision and get them involved?
We try to educate and shows how important of the climate change, like, and invite everyone to know how important of the climate change, and put in the policies of our school, and uh, everyone will have to do and enjoy it.
Bettine, I'm going to come to you next. Can you give us a tiny snapshot of what you're involved with today?
So I'm currently part of the TED Youth Countdown Council, which is, they just had an event and I was so glad that I went and had the opportunity to go, because I learned from so many inspirational leaders about their initiatives and how they're putting their climate initiatives into action. And I also was part of many breakout sessions where people were conversing about why exactly they are interested in this sort of area of work. And also something that I think I'm doing right now is that I'm actually pursuing education within this environmental sector. And I'm trying to become a sort of a asset to my country where they can use me to sort of address the emergent climate needs that we have in our nation.
What would you say to people listening if they are thinking, I want to learn to use my voice as well? What piece of advice would you give to them?
For me, it all just really plays with how you get yourself started. And I think that if you want to do something and you think it's small, I don't think you should think of it as small. You should probably just start with it, because wherever you start, especially if we're progressing towards a greener future, is definitely a start for anything. There's always this mindset that, but it's not enough. And I think that that's not true, because even if it's really small, you could start with it and then learn to grow with it. And then as the initiative grows, you can then extend that to others. And after you extend that to others, later you realize that it's not a small thing anymore because your initiative has grown. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter how small, it's the point that you're getting started.
Matilda, I'm going to come to you next. Would you give us a little snapshot of what you're involved with today?
So what I'm involved with today is it's more on the policy level, trying to facilitate for those youth voices that we were talking about here earlier today, have facilitate for that we can actually get the opportunity to speak up for the current and the future generations, and all initiatives that our speakers here have mentioned today. So sit in the World YMCA Executive Committee, which you can see as the board of the whole World Alliance. And YMCA, many don't know that it's the largest youth movement in the world. It's more than 58 million people that is connected to the movement. And that's a huge opportunity. At the same time, we have a great responsibility to act on the needs in the world and make sure that we give youth ourselves that we get the tools to speak up and make sure that we are on the decision tables, but also out in the field and helping where it's possible. Like to have that opportunity, when you need to have the governance. Some people can just like boring stuff, but it's necessary to make the organization work. But then when you can use that opportunity that so many people are gathered to steer the movement in the future direction, that's one of the things I'm working with, to not go in detail on all the governance stuff.
So it feels like there's so much potential for change to make our voices heard. But what about on a day-by-day basis? I guess it doesn't always feel like that. It doesn't always feel like our voices are getting heard. How do you stay motivated and hopeful and inspired that our voices coming together will make a difference?
Very good question, Jo. And I don't have the answer to that. It goes up and down because there's nothing more depressing to me personally than to understand what actually the world is not acting like we should do. We should just stop and make sure that the 1.5 degree is achieved. So, but at the same time, keeping up the motivation, and I'm optimistic. I'm not thinking about the bad side of it every day, because then no one will manage that. But to find someone that can remind you when you're actually not seeing any hope. Having a local group, having online community. I mentioned Herman, you're from the YMCA, but we're here in a group where not everyone is connected to the YMCA. So it's more about connected to other young people that is really making a change. If it's locally, nationally, internationally, just try to remind ourselves that we really have an opportunity to take action now that will mean something for the world we're living in.
Thank you, Matilda. So Magali, I want to come back to you. The people watching, they've listened to the stories, inspiring stories of what's going on, and they're thinking, yes, I want to do something. What would be the one piece of advice you would give to someone of what to do, but they don't know where to start?
I think I'll start by noting that it's common that when you see the bigger problem, you want to tackle the bigger problem, but perhaps they must then translate it to their local context first, and then ask themselves, from where I am currently, what is it that I can do? We can have a bigger environmental crisis, biodiversity loss, but where do I stay? In the village where I'm in, what is it that I can do? Then you start realizing, if in my village we have a nearby river that is polluted, perhaps that is where we start. Although the problem is bigger and is global, but there are steps at a local level that we can take. Of course, understand the bigger problem, reflect on it from your local context, and then see what is possible and mobilize fellow young people to do whatever that is small in the context that you're in.
Herman, I want to ask you the same question. Again, if there's people watching and they're thinking, wow, this issue is so big, but it's so important, and I want to get involved, but I don't know what to do. What would you say they should do?
I think if the thing did not go when how we expected, I think we keep try doing and try to find like a try to find a point, try to find a thing and solve solve it. Just keep doing and never give up from it.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you, Herman. I don't know about you, but I feel inspired. I feel encouraged about just a snapshot from 5 people around the world. Yes, doing amazing things, but actually all started somewhere, all with a little seed sown in them. And I think I'm going away thinking, how can I reflect on the space that I live in, my community? What can I do where I am? I want you guys to think about what you can do where you are, but also there is an opportunity to type in the comments and ask questions to the panel. And what more do you want to know from them and hear from them? But thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thanks for sharing today. But thank you for what you do for the environment. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you so much. Well, hello. I hope you enjoyed that recording made earlier in the week, and I was inspired and left with loads of questions. So we're excited to see your questions and your comments. You can type them now in the chat and put them live to our panel. The questions are coming in. I don't know if you are feeling overwhelmed by what you've heard already or if you're feeling excited, but I'm so encouraged by all of what we've been hearing this week and all that has been going on. Don't be shy with those questions. No question is too simple or too complicated. That is for sure. I know when I got started, I had so many questions of different things and people that I was inspired by. And so this is our opportunity to discuss and go a bit deeper. Okay, so our first one has come in, thank you. So this is to Simangeli, and it is, what is the best possible solution to create a green city? So that is a big question, and I'm expecting we're going to get lots more questions in. So keep it as quick as you can, even though it's a big question. But what is the best possible solution to create a green city?
It is a very big one indeed. But I would say most often we rely on city officials to start building trees. I would say if every citizen of a little town, you started planting a tree in your yard, slowly but surely, we are going to end up with a city that is a bit more greener. Thank you.
Oh, well done. That's a great start. And I've just moved to a new house and I'm planting a garden in my back garden as well. So we can all be a part of this in a little way. Okay, the next question is for Herman. And the question is, how do you see the climate change issues in Southeast Asia? Now, I appreciate that's also another big question. So just maybe a snapshot, how do you see the climate change issues in Southeast Asia? You just need to unmute there, Herman. You need to unmute yourself. Perfect.
Thank you very much. Southeast Asians has a lot of climate issues. Now, in Thailand and YMCA Chiang Mai, we have the White Green School, and we start now. We are going to start with the young generation. For me, as I am a teacher, I would start for solving the environment issues by the young generation, and start for myself and start to my student. And I think if we're gonna help together, I think Southeast Asia about the climate change in Southeast Asia will be better and better and end soon. Thank you.
Great, and Herman, I'm gonna stick with you because one more came in for you there. This is Marine in Quebec, and she says that I'm interested in learning more about the Green Ambassador in Thailand. What does it consist of, and how can it be scaled up and implemented in all YMCAs? So the Green Ambassadors in Thailand, how can we scale it up and implement it in more places?
You mean about Green Ambassador of YMCA, right?
Yeah, the Green Ambassador program, that's right.
Oh, 2 years ago, I joined the Green Ambassador. I felt really impressed about this program. I feel like I got lost uh, around 2 years ago because I don't know how to. I don't know. I wanted to save the environment. I don't know. I didn't know how to start it, and when I joined the Green Ambassador program, everyone, not only in Thailand, but everyone like this, youth submit, young submit solution like this. We share the experience. We share about the solution together, and I get a lot of experiences and share to the new generation in my school also.
Great, thank you. Okay, so quickly moving on, the questions are flooding in now. So this next question I want to take to Bettine, and it's how does the climate crisis intersect with other issues the world is facing? Again, it's a huge question, but a snapshot answer.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? My Wi-Fi is not too well.
Oh yeah, of course. We can take it to someone else if the Wi-Fi is struggling. But the question being, how does the climate crisis intersect with other issues the world is facing?
I think one of the biggest issues that I've seen happen in my own community is how it's intersect is that there is a prominent link between climate change and mental health, because a lot of times, because we are such a small community, there's only very few of us that are actually, you know, working towards a greener future in our islands. And we kind of think that like, oh, we're the only ones doing it, so we have to do it like all the time. We have to be part of all these opportunities, have to be doing everything ourselves. But actually, it's like a big mental, I think it's like a big mental load on an individual. And so I think most times we forget that there is others of us and we need to reach out to each other. And so that's where I think like networks, local networks and international networks are just so important for us to think about when you're actually fighting within this climate change war fight. And I just think like that is one of the biggest issues that I've seen. Of course there's many more, but this is one issue that I would like to put emphasis on, because I just think it's so important to be mentally aware of where you are within this fight.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you. And it is such a huge question, but that's a really helpful one to think about. This question for Anna Louisa. So when have you faced people who doubted you, particularly, so thinking in the area of entrepreneurship, when have you faced people who have doubted you? Maybe that's about your age or your gender, but how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, for me, every time that someone doubted me, I try to understand why this was happened. If it was really because I'm so young or because I'm a woman, or if I do have some issues or difficulties that I need to improve in myself. So I try to understand what was going on, and once I discover what was going on, I always try to make myself better in the case that I had an issue, or if it was because I'm too young or a gender issue, I try to prove them wrong and continue my work. In moments like this, I never think about giving up. I just think about make them wrong. To how could I make them wrong?
Brilliant answer, thank you. Matilda, a big question for you, but many experts see a considerable risk that funds may be redirected from climate to health. How can funders leverage the learning emerging from COVID-19 crisis to inform enhanced climate resilience? So again, it's a huge question, but what would be your first thoughts to that one?
For sure, that's a huge question. But I'm happy that we have this forum that we can just share all these different questions. Yeah, I'm not an expert, and but I will say that we have to look at the climate crisis as the same way as we have been acting with COVID now, and I think we can learn in my view, we can learn from how the world has reacted to COVID, and it's not yet a solution, but the climate crisis is as urgent as we have been acting on the COVID-19 crisis. And I think learning from this experience that the world has faced and this huge challenge, and how the world has mobilized and take action together. Now everyone are working to find a vaccine all over the world, different laboratories, and allocating funds towards that. The climate crisis should be as urgent acted to as we see with the COVID. So I think this is just a call to action that we really need to step up and allocate those funds and action in general towards actually really facing the challenge that it's the most urgent crisis that the world are facing in our time.
Great, thank you. And what a important note to finish this little time of questions on, that this is, and many of you know that this is that most important crisis the world is facing, because that's why you're here and that is why you're listening. I hope you've been inspired, encouraged. I'm reminded that these guys here are from around the world. There are many of us. And as we keep joining in together, using our voices together, learning from one another, championing each other, and never thinking that we are too young to start, we can make a huge difference and impact on this issue. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you guys for your questions. I'm so sorry for the ones that we haven't got to. It has been really insightful and I've been so privileged to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for discussing the importance of ground level actions starting at the individual level to create positive change. I would like to remind you to check the polls, as a new question will appear shortly for you to vote on. Let us now take a look at some of your comments from the chat and from Twitter using the hashtag YMCA Youth Solutions, taking part in this amazing dialogue. Gambadar says, "Thank you for great, powerful, and considerable presentations, lectures, and motivational speeches. I have collected so many essential ideas." Pablito Asuncion from the Philippines says, "The initiative of our young friends on the panel is so inspiring. I believe if all young people at the grassroots level do care about our environment, then the challenge of climate change may be resolved, yes, no matter how small the initiative is." I could not agree more, Pablito. When the Youth-led Solutions Summit was first being organized, it was for an in-person event coinciding with the 75th anniversary of the signing of the declaration that gave birth to the United Nations, which is actually tomorrow, 24th October, and was to be hosted in San Francisco, the city where it happened. Our what would have been a physical event meant that the conversations and ideas that have been worked on would have been a shared experience for all of us. Now that the world has changed in ways we could never have imagined, and the event has gone online, those conversations have been taking place all over the world behind closed doors. From 2 weeks ago till today, hundreds of young leaders have been meeting in person or virtually around the world, discussing problems, creating solutions, participating in workshops and online forums to cultivate ideas to address critical issues in their communities. Let's take a look into just a snapshot of some of those behind-the-scenes conversations that have happened, followed by meeting two participants from the solutions team around the world and hear about the work that they have been doing.
We must reset our relationship with the planet. and having this kind of team with like-minded folks like you all keep me going to act for this matter.
The size of the problem may be too big to be solved, but it's not. That's why we have the responsibility.
The reason why we're all taking interest is that time is of the essence and it can't wait.
South Dakota trash is like one of the biggest issues. It's just everywhere.
But also I feel that the voice of young people is not heard in the global or local or national level, and it has to be heard.
So it doesn't mean that you have to go and plant 1 million trees for you to bring the change. You can use the smallest things that you have.
Today we announce for the first time in global YMCA history that we are committing an incredible $150,000 to seed grants to young leaders.
Where you go, what you eat, how you work, how you treat people and environment, this will influence like the whole world.
Bo është rrezika pas një aksident trafiku, është kollë makina me pase ka kapë dhe mali I gjithë.
I guess I'm seeing the first-hand impacts of climate change directly affecting my community.
The summit marked a real shift in how we empower young people.
It starts from yourself and then it goes from society that you live in and then from nations and governments.
So we will be recruiting more young leaders, providing more resources, and driving more change.
Más que necesitar una asociación civil, necesitan ellos mismos tener el acceso a los...
Do we know any instances that we can get motivation from, like from our locality, where something has happened and the people or youth have taken an action?
One answer isn't enough. You need multiple actions and need everyone's help to get to that goal.
Creo que tenemos que mirar en dos puntos, que estamos hablando así de vidas, que todos nosotros tenemos vidas, no solamente humanos, todos somos vidas.
And empathy mapping is a tool that we use to really deeply understand the individuals whose lives we're trying to impact when we come up with any kind of solution.
So I think we need to take immediate actions.
Hi, I'm Gloria Shimuli from Kenya and part of the global planning team for the Youth-Led Solutions Initiative. As you have just seen behind the scenes over the last 2 weeks, hundreds of young leaders around the world have been coming together as part of solution teams to understand the climate emergency where they are. Small group meetings that would have normally take place in person have culminated in hundreds of hours of online conversations across geographical boundaries between continents and countries. These sessions have helped teams to learn and empathize, to define the issues, brainstorm the solutions, prototype them, and now with seed funding, test and implement. Today, I'm joined with Yuli Alija from the Kosovo and Melody Quintanilla from the Philippines. Both have been taking part in the process. Yule is studying in the Department of Psychology at the University of Pristina and is a youth worker, while Melody is a graduating student of Business Studies Home Economics from the University of the Philippines, Dilima, and is an intern. Welcome, Melody and Yule. Okay, I think one thing that I'm very much excited and keen to know, I know that you've been working on solutions and developing ideas for your community and to implement, hopefully with the seed funding. I would just like to understand if you can give us a brief explanation of the solutions that your teams have been working on.
Yes, so our solution is divided on 3 phases. First phase includes training young people on environmental crisis and emergency crisis when it comes to environment and the importance of planting trees and protecting the forest. These trainings will be led by experts who are already have knowledge on this area in environment and also in the climate crisis, but not only that, also on how to plant trees and how to take care of them. Besides this, the second phase includes also digitalizing the forest. So how we're going to do that? By putting cameras so the forest is not going to be cut or burned illegally, because in Kosovo this issue is very concerning and it happens a lot. So in one way we will monitor the forest. Besides that, we have the third phase where young people are going to plant the trees in a greenhouse, which is going to be a community greenhouse where they will plant these trees in the greenhouse and then they will plant these trees in the forest. In one way, we will plant trees in the forest and we will protect the forest by monitoring it.
Okay, so the Team Philippines is planning to create a plastic recycling facility wherein we're going to collect different types of plastic, like the soft plastic, the PET bottles, from our own community in order for us to keep the plastics away from the landfill as long as we can. And then we're going to turn these plastics into something much more, usable, like pillows, bean bags, eco bricks, and those are just some of the products that we are thinking.
Okay, thank you so much, Ule and Melody, for sharing with us the brilliant solutions that your team has been tirelessly working on. And I wish you all the best as you look forward to putting all these solutions and ideas into tests. And to you, Ule, what issues have your team been looking at in your local context?
Yes, so when we started like 2 weeks ago and discussing which is the biggest problem in Kosovo, and not only in Kosovo, but I mean in Balkans and in Eastern Europe, we thought that one of the biggest problems and the most concerning one is deforestation. Because deforestation is happening in Kosovo illegally and many trees are being cut and burned. So we thought it's the right time and the right moment to act and do something to stop this issue and prevent it.
Thank you so much, Ule, and I'm very impressed that we have a group of young people from Kosovo who are diligently working towards to restore the forest cover in Kosovo. So as we all know, the climate crisis is a global challenge. What I would love to understand from both you, Melody and Ule, is how did you start to approach such a big subject like the climate crisis?
Yeah, so I mentioned a couple of occurrences that happens in the Philippines due to climate crisis. And in order for us to properly tackle these problems, we actually had to identify its root cause. And we were able to name some factors that cause these problems, like improper waste segregation, non-implementation of environmental policies, unsustainable consumption, and single-use plastics. But considering all the number of factors identified, it would be hard to solve all these problems, but we still need to do something as the youth of this generation. So we identified the root cause, and based on our observation, the experiences of the people from our own communities, everyone agreed that the main cause is the growing problem of plastic pollution in the Philippines. Actually, according to studies, the Philippines ranks as the world's third biggest plastic polluter, with 2.7 million metric tons of plastic waste generated each year. And this is due to the widespread use of single plastic for packaging and the lack of recycling facilities here in the Philippines. And that's really bothersome right now for us.
And lastly, I'd like to understand, now with the successful seed finding, what excites you about testing and implementing your solutions over the next 3 to 6 months? So Ule, if you can share with us.
Well, first of all, we're going to work as a team and we're going to help the environment as a team. So that spirit, that team spirit it's a good and healthy for us as a persons and also as a whole team. When we are going to implement our project, it's not going to help only the Kosovo, but also the Balkan and Eastern Europe. So it's very exciting if we get the seed grant and if we try to implement it, because then we will see like the results of it, and it's going to be a process where a lot of people are going to be involved, and we on one way we are going to raise awareness not only to the local people but also to national level and international level.
Thank you so much, Ule. How about you, Melody? What excites you with the potential seed funding, how you're going to implement and test out your solutions in the Philippines?
For me, it's actually very exciting knowing that there is a big money allotted for the to help the environment. And I feel like as what I said a while ago, there's not a lot of plastic facilities or recycling facilities here in the Philippines. So we may be the first one here in a local government to have one. And it's very, exciting, not just for us in the YMCA, but also for the residents in the community, because as I said, this will be the first one, and it will also create jobs for the people in the community, and it will also stand as a social enterprise which will help finance the living of the different people here in the community.
Thank you so much, Melody. And I'm hoping for the best for your solution teams as you are looking forward to implementing the solutions and having that triple effect impact in your community and not only in the YMCA. So thank you so much, Ule and Melody, for joining me today and sharing with me your experiences and your perspectives, having taken part in the youth-led solutions process in the past 2 weeks. And I wish you all the best in your pursuits as you will be looking forward to hopefully implement your solutions with the seed funding and be able to create change in your communities. Thank you so much.
That was so motivating. Thank you. And I see that you've been posting on Twitter using the hashtag YMCA Youth Solutions. Tina Weaver says, start small, learn to grow, extend to others. So simple, thank you. Marlos from Zambia says, looking to the future of climate action, the time to implement the ideas and solutions is now. Now, let's take a look at a video from one of our sponsors, Wise Men International.
Wise Men International, to acknowledge the duty that accompanies every right. With every privilege comes responsibility.
Wise Men International is a global non-profit service association headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland.
We are comprised of affiliated clubs located across the world, connected by a common desire to build a better world for all humankind. This is our overlying mission.
Each of our clubs is as unique as the community it serves, developing and operating its own distinctive programs and activities.
YMI Club members are world-minded, service-oriented volunteers committed foremost to bettering their communities through civic engagement.
They are constructive, passionate and energetic people excited by international fellowship and collaboration, looking to share fun but also maximize their service impact by being part of a global network working for positive and sustainable change in the world.
Called Wise Men and Wise Women, club members make a difference through simple acts. They may give a free concert at a local nursing home, coordinate food delivery to the housebound, run a toy drive for disadvantaged children.
In addition to its own programs, a YMI club will often support other worthy, like-minded groups either with funds or time.
Founded in Toledo, Ohio in 1922, primarily to provide service to the YMCA, this relationship continues to define the YMI movement. The YMCA remains our principal partner and supporting its agenda both through direct cooperation and independent action is a priority. We are proud of our shared history with the YMCA and subsequently our Christian heritage from which the core values of our organization developed and which inspires the selfless service that is a cornerstone of our movement.
Clubs also contribute to the international, area and regional projects of the association.
Time of Fast. The Time of Fast program funds YMI, YMCA or YMCA affiliate projects primarily in the poorer nations which align with at least one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs. Going green. Since 2010, we have acknowledged and accepted the need to reduce our environmental footprint. Every year, we commit money to supporting YMI, YMCA or YMCA affiliate projects and participating in carbon offset programs aimed at bringing about enduring reductions in the CO2 emissions. Will you join our international family? To learn more about opportunities with Wise Men International, visit our website www.ysmen.org or write to us at ihq@ysmen.org.
The next 12 months are critical, not just for young people, for solutions and ideas to problem solve and create change, but for our planet. Big decisions and even bigger commitments need to be made by our world leaders. We need strong leadership and global collaboration for us to succeed. We round out the summit with a look ahead at one particular piece that is to come in the next 12 months. To tell us a little bit more is Brona from Edinburgh in Scotland, where she attends George Watson's College and is currently studying for her school exams. Along with being involved in YMCA, Brona is a Girl Guide, having taken part in the International Poacher Camp as well as spending summer of 2019 in Switzerland with the guides. With COP26 taking place in Glasgow next year, Brona understands the importance of Scotland's role as host.
Scotland is part of the UK. However, because it has its own government, we are responsible for our own carbon emissions. 90% of Scotland's electricity production is from renewable sources. The Scottish Government has made a legally binding target to be carbon neutral by 2045. Welcome to Glasgow in the west of Scotland. In November 2021, the eyes of the world will be on this city as it hosts COP26. And this is where it's all happening. But why is it so important? COP26 is important because it's the first chance the nations get to discuss the climate commitments since Paris in 2015. Since then, young people have been participating in climate demonstrations and strikes around the world, declaring a climate emergency. November 2021, YMCA will be bringing together young people to participate in COP26. We hope to see you here.
The eyes of the world will be watching. Let's hear a couple of final messages from you. Marco Tavanti from our partners at the University of San Francisco says on Twitter, YMCA is committed to amplifying youth solutions that are addressing some of the world's biggest issues. Are you? Emily Schmidt from the USA says, thank you for this inspiring event that infuses hope for our future. Our time together is drawing to a close, but it's not over just yet. If you're watching on Hopin right after the summit closes today, head over to the Sessions tab where Aidan Davies, World YMCA Program Executive, will be hosting a post-summit show for your thoughts, takeaways, words of inspiration, and reflections. Now, more than ever before, we need concerted actions on the ground to achieve the SDGs. Multilateralism, Collaboration and inclusivity will help us to rebuild better and ensure a more just and resilient world where no one is left behind. So, armed with your knowledge, be fearless, be focused, be honest, and be empathetic. Only then can we achieve the future we want. Continue posting your reflections on social media throughout the week using the hashtag YMCA Youth Solutions. And in the comments, we've posted a link to a feedback survey that we would love your help with over the weekend. And there are a couple more polls to fill out on Hopin too. Ymca Kashabasu signing off. It was amazing to be a part of this journey at the first Youth-led Solution Summit. We are so excited for the future. Thank you. See you soon. Stay safe and have a wonderful weekend.